start recording from this moment, if you like. We move into preliminary matters. We have 2 minutes of the previous meetings.
Excuse me, could you introduce yourself so we know who you are?
We don't normally do that. We don't normally do that. Everybody has a...
Well, I can't see who you are from here.
I'm going to press on with the meeting, and if I may say, you know, I'm assuming that everybody is going to be respectful and follow the normal procedures for meetings. I don't think, like Barack Obama, that we're going to have to sing to sort of bring order back again. But we will proceed with the meeting. I'm chairing the meeting, and we'll carry on if you don't mind. So we go on to minutes of the previous meetings. Those are on pages 7 to 20. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. There is an issue about declarations of interest. If any members have any declarations of interest, if there's any suggestions about the changes in the agenda, the items of business. Councillor Rennie?
Chair, could I ask, because there are so many members of the public and obviously ward councillors for the items on the agenda 7 and 8 in relation to Sorghum Massey, would you be willing to perhaps rearrange the order of business in order to facilitate them for an early getaway, or is there a reason perhaps why that may not be possible?
We have had some discussions about this. There are a number of items, they won't be long, I don't think, that relate to the financial background to the authority, which I think would be helpful to the members of the public to understand the context against which we're making some discussions. There is also proposals for changes and amalgamations in St Helens, and I think again, I don't think it'll be a long item, but I think for the public who are here to look at decisions further down the agenda, it will be useful and interesting to see, you know, that he's not just in isolation, there are other items on the agenda as well. So if you don't mind, I think we will... Would you give order, please? We will proceed with the agenda as it's printed, if that's all right. But if it gets lengthy, if we get into lengthy, we'll look at that, because I know the public have got some distance to travel, but we'll stick with the agenda as printed, if you don't mind. So we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda. That's pages 21 to 30, and that is the petition concerning the merger of Upton and West Kirby fire stations. Now, I think there is a member of the public who is wishing to present a petition to the authority. Is that not right?
No. No, I don't think she knew that he was getting presented today.
Okay, fine. So we'll move on to item...
She wasn't informed.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 4 then, and that relates to a deputation. And I understand that there's a deputation who want to come and give a presentation before the authority today. Would there be somebody, a spokesman for that deputation, sir?
Yes,
Would you like to stand and give we'll just outline the procedure for the help and assistance of the public, if possible, with regard to deputations.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
We will in a moment, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just explain that the authority's constitution standing orders require that a deputation can be addressing the authority. However, there is a limit of an up to 5-minute address, and this can be followed by a further 5 minutes of questions from members of the authority. However, I do have to say at this point that question and answer session does not form a debate, because clearly this is not part of any ongoing consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a spare seat at the end here with a microphone if you'd like to step forward and use that. Stand or sit as you prefer.
You want to do it now?
Yes.
How does this work?
Just press the button.
Bottom one.
Yeah. You're on.
Right. My name's Les Spencer. I'm the chairman of the Sorghum Massey Village Conservation Area Society. I'm communicating the majority view of the householders and members who are opposing the plan you're considering today, namely to build a new fire station on Greenbelt land adjacent to our conservation area and directly opposite a listed Grade 2 historic stone bridge. Time does not permit me to present the full extent of our opposition, but we hope you will appreciate that the argument is not as black and white as the Chief Fire Officer has been suggesting. At this moment, I'm unable to fully illustrate the impact of loss of amenity use, breach of green belt policy, habitat loss, public nuisance to adjacent sheltered housing, and a projected drop in nearby property values estimated at 10%. I have prioritised other concerns. The Chief Fire Officer has repeatedly stressed that there is no alternative operational response, no plan B. The intention to build in this location has been presented as a matter of dire public safety for residents impacted by the closure of the West Kirby station. I hesitate to describe his tone as scaremongering, but that's how it seemed at times. As the committee should be aware, the West Kirby Hoylake Mills area has had no cover from the West Kirby station for half of the last 2 years, as it has been operationally closed for half of every week with call-outs covered from Upton. Presumably a risk assessment was conducted by the Fire Authority, and it was felt that closure for approximately 180 days a year didn't unacceptably compromise residential safety in the West Kirby area. Indeed, we believe that call-out response times of 10 minutes from Upton to the area concerned is broadly comparable to national averages out to many other parts of Merseyside. Why is it currently acceptable to provide fire and emergency cover from Upton, but apparently of such critical importance to do it from the proposed Sorghum Massey Greenbelt site in the future? If it is felt that response times from Upton to West Kirby need shortening, then why doesn't the Fire Authority use one smaller targeted response vehicle to complement the larger appliances on a consolidated improved site at Upton? That would cost a lot less than the 4.2 million anticipated for the Sorghum Massey station. Like the ambulance services, these vehicles can be on standby on the road awaiting call-outs, but based from Upton. Why is it that Merseyside, which is one of the larger UK fire authorities, still sends out fully manned large appliances to minor call-outs? Is there internal union resistance to more flexible operational responses? Is this reliance upon large appliances dictating operational restructure in this case? It is clear that Merseyside Fire Authority have set a precedent that cover for West Kirby can be safely provided from Upton. So there is, despite what the Chief Fire Officer says, an option B, and that's closing West Kirby and redeveloping Upton. There's also a plan C, and that's to employ a smaller targeted response vehicle to supplement cover from Upton. This development completely hinges upon getting permission to build on Greenbelt land. Emergency services can seek planning permission on Greenbelt land if they can prove very special circumstances, and only where there are no alternatives. We contend that there is a workable alternative, and that is based upon the redevelopment of Upton, but for whatever reason this hasn't been fully publicly debated. There are also financial aspects of this development that seem to compromise public perceptions of transparency and suggest conflicts of interest in the planning process. There's clearly a conflict of interest that the sellers of the Sorghum Massey land are Wirral Council, whose officers will adjudicate approval of any planning application, and also whether very special circumstances are actually present. The land is currently worthless, but with planning will be much more valuable. What price and terms have been agreed for the Fire Authority to acquire this land? Who will actually pay for it, Merseyside Fire Authority or via grant from central government? How much capital inflow does the authority expect from the sales of West Kirby and Upton? Forgive us for being cynical, but might the drivers of this development be mostly financial, and the perceived safety needs of West Kirby residents a convenience to justify the development? The Fire Authority stands to gain the resale revenue of Upton and West Kirby, and Wirral Council might be receiving a commercial price for an otherwise worthless piece of land. From a cash flow position, that seems like a win for everyone other than the local residents. Furthermore, we gather that this scheme in principle has been approved by central government for a 1.49 million DCLG grant. But might that be predicated upon an exaggeration of the dangers of longer response times to West Kirby? Do the grant providers know that an adequate service is already being provided from Upton for 50% of each week, and that redevelopment of Upton would cost a public purse a fraction of the 4.2 million total cost of the new Sorghum Massey station? Our feeling is that very special circumstances might be being inflated to circumvent Greenbelt protection and to achieve financial restructuring benefits and access to central government grants. It looks as though special circumstances are further being boosted by attempts to involve Merseyside Police and North West Ambulance Services as subsidiary tenants. However, neither party has shown any expression of interest, so I hope they will be excluded from the planning consideration. Much is said about the health and safety benefits to West Kirby by moving to Sorgo Massey, but what of the lengthening response?
Now, please, in fairness.
What about the lengthening response times for Upton? The primary dangers are to places like Arrow Park Hospital.
Okay, that's, you've had it down there. Thank you.
Such a
As we have a,
Unbelievable.
well, before we come to questions,
I was just going to say, is there no facility to allow an extra 2 more minutes?
I don't need 2 minutes, probably 30 seconds would be enough.
no, we've had the 5 minutes.
You don't want to listen to
Um,
You don't want to listen to consultation. You don't want to listen to this.
What we will do is ask if we've had one view, one side of the view, if you like. Is there anybody in the audience with a contrary position to that who would like to make a point?
What, favour of the 5 minutes?
In favour of it?
No, that we've had that side of the argument. In balance and in fairness, it happens in all local authorities. If there is one side of a presentation, if there is a contrary view to that presentation, they must be given an opportunity as well. Is there anybody who has a contrary view to what has been said? Sir?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going to
You
use...
just say who you are.
Yeah, I'm just going to use on the Vice Chair of Merseyside FPU. It's just over
Come
some
down
of
and
the
use
points.
the
Would you like to come and use the microphone? Again, you will be given 5 minutes to make a presentation. Then we will move on into questioning. Some of the points, sir, that you might have made could be picked up in questions. I don't know.
I'm Tommy Hughes. I'm the Vice Chair of Merseyside Fire Brigade Union. If I may, Chair, I've been given comments from Mark from the Brigade Secretary, who unfortunately can't be here as he's at a regional committee meeting. The viewpoints do reflect the viewpoint of Merseyside Fire Brigade Union. Fire Brigade Union, first I'd like to state, always applauds local communities when we come together to fight unnecessary and damaging cuts to essential services. The FBU in this instance agree with the Chief Fire Officer and with the Fire Authority. The fire station staffed with firefighters 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is the most effective way to immediately deploy firefighters into their communities to save and preserve life. We also agree that fire engine staffed with 5 firefighters is the safest and most efficient way to deal with the multitude of different rescue scenarios that firefighters can face every day of their working lives. Therefore, the FBU are committed to defend whole-time fire cover in Merseyside and also to fight to protect safe and effective criminals. On a purely professional level, and as firefighters, we're fundamentally opposed to the use of small fire units or target response vehicles.
You like that, mate?
Their very name gives an insight into the limitations of these vehicles. They can only safely and effectively deal with small fires. What they do is they divert valuable funding away from maintaining fully staffed and crucially fully equipped fire appliances. Firefighters clearly need the correct tools for the job to carry out effective rescues wherever and whenever that may need to be the case. Sending firefighters to emergency incidents in transit vans or in cars severely limits what we're able to do when we arrive at those incidents. I'm sure everyone would agree that there is no cliche that in these situations every second really does count. Every firefighter on every station in the country would echo those views. I'd also like to say, it's not your firefighters, it's not the Chief Fire Officer, and it's not the authority who have caused this situation to arise. It's the government who have forced this situation. It's the government who have forced the situation on the fire service and on the communities of Greasy and Sorgo Massey. In light of recent events in Europe and North Africa and the potential for terrorist attacks in the UK, these cuts, I'm sure you'd agree, look even more dangerous. That's why the Fire Brigade Union are committed to continuing to fight these cuts, both locally and nationally, although we do fear there is yet worse to come. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So, thank you for that. So now there will be for members to ask questions for 5 minutes, if there are any questions that members have. Councillor Allen.
Can I just ask if it's now the appropriate time for the Chief Fire Officer to address some of the queries that were brought up by Mr Spencer, or are we going to debate that?
Yeah, because it was said that this is not a debate, that this is for the members of the public to make the delegation, and we, if we like, we go into the agenda and we pick up any of these points in the agenda proper. It is not part of the, it's a delegation, point made, alternative view, and we'll get into the issues within the reports themselves. Go on.
Just to respond to Councillor Rennie, all of the points raised by both parties are covered within the reports on the agenda, Chair.
Councillor Gladden.
Thanks, Chair. It's a question for you. When we look at the incidents that you as pharmacists have to attend, I think just from people's point of view, how many are actual fires and how many are road traffic accidents or anything else? And not just for me.
Yeah, I don't personally have. I know possibly where we're
What
going
percentage, what do you think?
is that fire calls are decreasing as assuming is the point that you're making. However, the point if it's towards the target response vehicles, if it's towards the small fires units, is that potentially a luxury when you do have funding to be able to use them as supplement. However, when the funding for those vehicles and the personnel in vehicles is going to be taken out of an incredibly tight budget, that money, quite clearly for me, from an operational purpose, needs to go to funding fully equipped and fully staffed fire engines, so it's available to respond to all types of incidents, as I say, not just to small fires. It seems to be funding that's directed in a place where it can be better used elsewhere.
So,
I'd just like to ask you, what is your response time as opposed to the rest of the country, and given the fact that we have whole time firefighters?
I could say that the figure for the response time is in the package, Chief, would you be able to?
Yeah, but for everybody here today, the response time as opposed to other fire policies, and the fact that we're whole time.
maybe the Chief will pick that up during the presentation, his presentation, further down the agenda. Are there any other questions regarding the delegation point and counterpoint? If not, we'll move on, because we did say that we would deal next with item 5. We'll move on to item 7, which is pages 135 to 370, the Wirral Fire Cover Consultation number 2, outcomes. Chief.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to inform members of the outcomes of the 12-week public consultation process of the proposal to merge Upton and West Kirby fire stations and a new station on Sogham Massey Road as an alternative to the outright closure of West Kirby fire station. As we've stated previously, members, in either option, one of the two existing whole-time fire appliances is redesignated whole-time retained on a 30-minute recall for resilience purposes, as that is required to deliver the reduction of 22 whole-time equivalent posts, which is how the savings are made. Paragraphs 15 to 21 on pages 137 describe, 137 to 138 rather, describe how we publicise the consultation process. Appendix 1 paragraph 151 to 168, Appendix 1 pages 151 to the state of 168 is the public consultation document which provides a concise summary of the financial challenges faced by the authority as a result of the ongoing cuts to its grant, a summary of structural change options open to the authority to make the necessary savings, and my professional view on each. Appendices 2 and 3 on pages 169 to 213 contain a record of all of the correspondence entered into by officers and members of the public, MPs and councillors over the proposal. The consultation events themselves are listed at paragraph 23 on page 138 through to 139, which I'll just read them out for you, members. So there was the focus group at Sogham Massey, a focus group in West Kirby, a focus group in Upton, public meeting in Sorrel Massey, a stakeholders meeting in Hoylake, a public meeting in Upton, a public meeting in West Kirby, and then an all-Wirral joint forum at Birkenhead Fire Station. The report goes on to provide specific details around the outcomes from each of the individual components of the consultation process that I've just listed in some detail. Paragraphs 30 to 34 on pages 139 to 140 and at Appendix 6 at pages 311 to 326 provide the detail of the outcomes from the online questionnaire and the questionnaires that were returned in hard copy at public meetings. Paragraphs 35 to 42 on pages 140 to 143 provides a summary of the outcomes from the focus groups and deliberative forums, with the full detail contained in the Opinion Research Services report at Appendix 5 on pages 261 to 310. I just need to point out at this point, members, there is a typing error in the report which refers to that as Appendix 7 rather than 5. Okay, it is Appendix 5. Paragraphs 43 on pages 143 to 144 provides a summary of the outcomes of the postal survey of 10,000 homes, 5,000 of which were on the Upton station area, which includes Sorrel Massey, and 5,000 of which were on the West Kirby station area. That survey and its outcomes are also referenced within the Opinion Research Services report at Appendix 5. Paragraphs 44 to 59 on pages 144 to 146 provides a summary of the outcomes of the public meetings and the stakeholder forums. Appendix 4 at pages 215 to 260 captures a summary of the questions raised and the answers that I gave in response at the public meetings. It would be remiss of you members not to draw your attention to the financial implications within the report of paragraphs 68 to 71 on page 148. In total, the cost of this process was £46,343. I should point out, members, that that's in addition to the first consultation process over the Greasby site, which was £18,744. That, of course, takes no account of the officer time that was invested in both of the processes. Now, we will undoubtedly be criticised for this outlay, quite possibly by the very people who insisted that we hold the second consultation. The lesson here is, members, that whatever we do, we can't win. Right? That's certainly been my experience through this consultation and all the others that we've undertaken. Paragraphs 6 to 14 on pages 136 to 137 in the main body of the report summarise the overall outcomes from the process. I don't propose to read through them all now, members, because you will have had the opportunity to do so. I will summarise, however, to say that there is significant opposition to the merger proposal from the residents of Sorrel Massey. I gave an undertaking at the public meetings that I would faithfully represent their views, and I believe that the comprehensive report that you have in front of you today does just that. That said, the views of the people of West Kirby, Hoylake and Mells also need to be heard, as it is they who would suffer longer response times if the merger was not to go ahead. The absolute majority of participants in this process consider that the merger proposal is reasonable in the circumstances. If I quote directly from paragraph 22 and 23 of the Opinion Research Services report on page 274, in general, though, there is considerable support for the authority's preferred merger option. In fact, the levels of support manifest in the resident survey and deliberative meetings might fairly be described as emphatic. Bear in mind, members, that the resident survey elicited over 10 times the responses than the questionnaire. So MFRA may proceed on the basis that it has considerable community support for its draft proposal. The next sentence, however, points out, rightly, that this is not simply a numbers game, which is correct. Not least because the primary concern of the Fire and Rescue Authority is with the discharge of functions under the Fire and Rescue Services Act, which, members, I will cover on the next report on the agenda. I'll pause at that point, members, to take any questions that you might have.
Excuse me, sorry, but we've got a leak here.
Yeah, the checking it.
Okay, so colleagues, we're talking about here 7, which is the process of consultation. It's just condensation coming out of the air conditioning bottles. Are there any, you want to move to the seat behind? Are we okay? Are there any questions regarding the issue of, come on to the decision making in a moment, but any questions regarding the consultation process? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Now, I clearly will just talk about the consultation because hopefully you'll allow me to come in more on item 8 as we move forward. I mean, I think it's fair to say that the residents in Sorghum Massey and in fairness probably the wider Wirral area, many of those residents have the opinion, whether it's correct or not, that there has been some collusion between the Chief Fire Officer and his officers and senior officers of Wirral Borough Council, particularly in relation to the identification of sites. And I think really we'd just like to bottom that out here today and have a response from the Chief. From my understanding, there were 6 sites primarily detailed, which could be possible venues for a new merged fire station to be built. If the Chief could just, to allay the fears of the public and hopefully to dispel the myth that as I say, their belief that there has been any collusion, could he please just go through those 6 sites that were given to us in the beginning and just say for whatever reason each one of those was dismissed. There's a particular area which is a wooded area in the Sorghum Massey area, which, although the residents may not have liked it to go there, I think they would have found it a little bit more palatable. But when the decision was taken by Wirral Borough Council to withdraw the site from Greasby, it would appear that this site that we're talking about here today in Sorghum Massey actually popped up. And I'm just wondering what the process was of that, and I think it would be helpful not only to myself and all members here, but particularly to the members of the public, if we could just know why and for what reasons those 6 sites were either dismissed or we are where we are today with the present decision that we're going to make on item 8. It has been useful as well to look at some of the email trails in relation to the freedom of information requests that have been made by a member of the public. And I'm sure that member of the public clearly knows who he or she is. But there was a couple of points which residents and in fairness ward councillors have asked me to raise here today, and I wanted to do that publicly. And if perhaps you will bear with me, and perhaps again if we could just have an answer as to the explanation. There was an email which was sent to a senior officer at Wirral Council, one of the emails which came to light by the Freedom of Information request from the Deputy Chief Executive, in which clearly he thanks an officer of Wirral Borough Council for their efforts and their pragmatic advice. I understand that is probably in relation to identifying the site. And it's expressed that it seems to be a really exciting development and one which the whole management team at Merseyside Fire and Rescue would be really keen on. He therefore looks forward to working with the officer from Wirral Borough Council. And a remark was made about we now look forward to deliver the operation Reading by Firelight begins. What does that term, Operation Reading by Firelight begins, mean? It's here, it's confusing to all, but it's something which residents and ward councillors in that area have hitched onto really, and perhaps quite rightly, where they do feel that it is just one of perhaps many reasons why they believe that there has been some collusion with officers of Wirral Borough Council. I'm not saying that, it's what residents have asked me to raise here today.
Councillor Kearns, you've indicated it's on the same point.
Yes, sir. Sorry, Chair. Very much so. I think it's wrong for the member. The member said I'm a new member. I've been around politics for a lot longer than the member have been. The member saying it. But I think it's wrong for the member to come here and say there's been collusion and not substantiate in the speech that she's just made, not substantiate one iota of any proof of collusion to choose that site. It could have been asked in a basis, why was that site chosen? But that wasn't the thing. It was an accusation against the chief officer, and that shouldn't be allowed to happen. Thanks, Chairman.
Well, Councillor Gladden, I'll come back. But Councillor Gladden, is this on the same point?
Yes, Chair, it is. And really, just to take it forward, because, you know, it's always somebody said, or this was carried on. The thing, no matter what, following on from the chief's position or our position, is that any decision will be taken by the planning department of the Borough Council. There's going to be, on that council, as far as I know, on that committee, will be representatives from every one of the political parties. Collusion, there can be as much collusion as you like between people wanting to talk, but the final decision on whether or not that piece of land, or any piece of land, goes to anywhere, will have to be made by those people there. So, in reality, when you say that collusion, what you're really doing is you're accusing those people as well. They are actually the only part, along them, the licensing and planning are the only councils, the committees on the council that are sub judice. They are on the law. And so when Councillor Rainey starts talking about collusion, you're starting to pull people in there, and to be blunt about it, we have people sent to jail for less than that. So, you know, it's easy enough to throw these things out, and it may be good for the public. But, you know, I think you're actually attacking some of your own people as well, who actually sit on those committees.
I mean, clearly, it's not my intention. I think I did say I was asking the question because it is perceived by some members of the public. I'm not saying that I perceive it, and I certainly hope, you know, that that isn't the case, and I do believe it's not the case, and that's why I've specifically asked if you could dispel the myths that are going around and ask the Chief Fire Officer just to itemise the reasons why these other sites were dismissed, and I think that would then satisfy members of the public. You know, I'm taking no lectures from members of the Labour Party accusing me of saying that officers have colluded. That was not what I said. I said I was asking the question because it was something which was in the mind of local residents and perhaps some of ward colleagues out there. And all I'm doing for those Labour members who clearly would like to, you know, stop throwing things at me, carry on if you wish to, but I am asking for that myth to be dispelled, so that at least when we come to the next item, I would hope that the members of the public, you know, have in their minds that we have done all we can as a fire and rescue authority to make sure that those other sites were not suitable for this particular merger that is proposed.
Okay, so the political management of the authority, as we know, is in the hands of members. And we delegate these decisions to our officers. And we know that for a prolonged period of time, we had a plan to merge sites in the Wirral and other parts of the borough, of the county. And we delegated to our officers to look at the Wirral as an option for merger. So, Chief?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll try and give Councillor Rainey some of the reassurances that seating couldn't be built on that particular piece of land. Members should realise that we don't own the land, we don't have any compulsory purchase powers, therefore we are very much hostages to fortune in these negotiations, given the fact that it's just not within our gift to go out and secure land. We are very much beholden to the landowners, and as you'd expect, in the first instance we would engage with local authority partners, because as we've choose my words carefully now, the dealing with the private sector can be more problematic for reasons, again, which might be self-evident to you all. Once the Greenbelt site was, the library site was withdrawn, it was clear at that point then that the only other land that we could pursue that was in Wirrell's ownership at that time, again, because we don't have compulsory purchase powers. And whilst we have, or agents on our behalf have approached landowners in the vicinity of Three Lanes End, we can't force people to sell, nor can we force people to engage with us to consider selling their land. The one piece of land that was suitable from a response perspective was the piece, or is the piece of land that sits adjacent to Woodpecker Close, and is the one which is under consideration now, members. It's that simple. There is no hidden agenda here. It is just as simple as that. You know, we can't compulsory purchase land. I can't magic land up out of nowhere. We've got to deal with what we've got, and I have to say that for the record, I am very grateful to our colleagues in Wirral, to Knowsley and to St Helens for all of the assistance that they've afforded us in that regard, because it's been very time consuming for them as it has for us. But it is in the pursuit of an outcome that delivers the least impact on community safety. Therefore, their efforts, in my view, are to
Page 371. Chief.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report, members, is to advise you of the operational response saving options for West Wirral, taking into account the outcomes of the public consultation process that you've considered in the previous report, and my professional recommendation to you as to which option you should approve in order to achieve the least impactful outcome on operational response. Members are well aware of the background to this particular proposal, not least because you've just considered the consultation outcomes, and as I've said during in speaking to the last report, that we previously undertook the 12-week consultation process last year over the Griesby Library site. Members are also well aware as to the reasons why we're having to make these structural changes, but for completeness and for the record, or certainly discussed this issue at length, certainly up to this point, so I'll pause at that point to take any questions that you may have.
The authority considered the report in principle, exposed it for comprehensive public consultation. That is now what we've got back before us. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask a question here. On targeted response vehicles, you say that these vehicles are to respond to small non-life risk incidents. Can you give an example, please, of what a small non-life risk incident would be?
Yes, certainly, it is a what we term a secondary fire, so a antisocial small fire. Examples would be bin bags in rear entries, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Members, opportunity for questions on this report?
Not questions, just some comments. I'll wait to see if any
Oh,
of the
yes,
councillors
Councillor
want to talk.
I'd just like to say, as a member of this authority, I'm very proud of what the Chief and the Deputy Chiefs do, and all our staff. But I'm even more proud that we've got whole-time firefighters, and our response rates are the lowest in the country for the fire engine leaving the station and getting to your house. Anywhere else in the country, you're talking 10 minutes. And minutes cost lives.
Yes, Councillor Reddy, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll willingly come in now. I mean, clearly, you know, today we're debating really what is best for the people of West Wirral. And it's a difficult decision, but we're trying to come to some sort of conclusion as to how we can best offer those people the best operational preparedness and, in fact, the best operational response to those people, particularly if their lives are in danger of fire, or if there's a serious incident, or clearly they're trapped and need the assistance of Merseyside Fire and Rescue to rescue them from a road traffic accident. But we're clearly not here to debate the issue of whether or not it's a good idea to have it on greenbelt land. We're here purely to look at the safety of the majority of the people in West Wirral. And probably, I find myself here today, it's one of probably the most difficult decisions that I've had to make in 24 years of being a councillor. And it's a difficult decision, particularly for all of us, but for myself personally, I probably find myself forming an opinion which is in opposition to some of my colleagues on Wirral. And I'm sorry about that, but I have to take a pragmatic approach on what is the best opportunity of saving lives in that wider West Wirral area. And I just wanted to say thank you really to the work that those local councillors in the area have done in keeping residents up to date, because it has been confusing. I mean, we know the jargon, and clearly the officers who have attended the public meetings have been very careful to try and not use jargon, get it all over to the people, and they've done a good job, in my opinion, on that. But where there has been gaps of misunderstanding, or where residents have wanted further information, then clearly those ward councillors have done a really good job on that. But as I say, it's probably one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make, and it would be quite easy for me politically to say, well, I'm voting against that. But if I did, then my own sort of standards would say, well, it is beholden on me then to identify where that extra funding would come from to fill that gap in our budget. And I have to say, I cannot do that. I cannot find anywhere else where I could take that money from, so that we didn't have to go down the route of closing 2 fire stations in Wirral and having a merged fire station in Sorble Massey. So the only way that I can sort of square that for myself is to really call on some of the life experiences that everybody has as life goes on. And I have, and I'm very grateful for the fact that I have been a member of another blue light organisation. And I have had to go along to incidents, and I'm not shroud waving here, and I'm not sort of, hand on bleeding heart, but I have been at incidents where you will hold somebody whose life is just dripping away in front of you. And the only way that you could reconcile yourself and your conscience with that is to say to yourself, could I have done anything different to make these circumstances have a different outcome? Or could I have got here any quicker? And that is the only way that I've found through my life experiences that I can handle that. And I would imagine that is exactly what firefighters have to do on a day-to-day basis. And for those reasons alone, I have to say that I have to put the safety of the 26,000 people in that West Wirral area at the forefront of my thinking. It's not an easy decision, but I do believe that those 26,000 people deserve to have the opportunity and the benefit of an extra 2 minutes response, so that firefighters can get to them and give them the best chance of carrying on with life, or not obviously,
And that's what I'm not prepared to accept. So I'd like to myself support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor.
Chairman, thank you. I agree with what Councillor Renier said, because she has explicitly detailed it. While no loss of life could have been happening, an incident happened in Knowsley a fortnight ago, or within the last 2 weeks, where 7 fire tenders had to be engaged in a fire. Now, while there was no loss of life, there was 400 jobs that could have gone completely had the fire people had not responded very quickly to save that particular factory and some of the equipment within it. It is not just public safety that the fire has to engage in, it's all the periphery things around it. When you're getting 7 tenders having to go to one particular site, you then have to think in terms of all these stations that were closing and coming in. If there was more than 2 incidents across Merseyside, where would you get the fire tenders from? Thanks, Chairman.
Councillor Maloney.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've all listened, we've all read the reports, and we do understand that people are really, really concerned about this new build. Reading the information and what I've heard today, it's all about planning. We are not a planning committee. councillors and the people will have the opportunity to go back to Wirral Council and sort out their grievances, have an opportunity to put into that. It's not our job here today. It's our job on Merseyside Fire Authority to make sure that everyone in Merseyside gets the best possible fire cover that we at this moment can afford to give them. So on that, I'd like to thank Councillor Rennie for her support and move the recommendation, Chair, that we accept.
Okay, well, I've just got a couple of questions.
Right.
Yeah, Councillor Roberts.
Okay, well, I would like to second Councillor Maloney's proposal that we approve the recommendation. I'd like to thank Councillor Rennie for what he said. I don't often agree with her, but I certainly didn't go into politics to make cuts. I thought I would do the other way around, and this is one of the most difficult decisions we've had to make. But I think we're doing the right thing for the people in West Wirral.
Oh yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. As a new member, I would just like to add some comments. First of all, I would like to thank my colleague here, Councillor Rennie, for what she said. I think that was an absolutely excellent what she said, and it is a very, very difficult decision for everybody. And myself, I have read the reports here like a fine-tooth comb. I've been through everything, and I cannot see any other way forward for us all today here. I think this is the best option, considering what we've got on the table and these government cuts that we've got facing us and more to come. So that's where I am at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, thank you, members. This is the document, one of the largest reports that we've had presented before us, other than the budget, always. And I think there's no question of predetermination. This was a proper process of consultation, set against the background of unavoidable cuts to be made and a limited number of sites. Because we're not property developers. You know, we are presented with sites, we go through the process. We have to work in partnership, in this case, with Wirral Council. We've not chosen this site to punish the community. Of course not. This is about improving public safety, because as our resources reduce, we have to start thinking more as about a county, a one whole provision of full fire and safety and rescue for the whole county. And where we place our individual provisions, and bear in mind one of the opening comments I made about, you know, substantial cuts still to come, we'll have big decisions in public life. Councillor Rennie, you're absolutely right, and thank you, and Councillor Welsh, for your support on that. When you're in public life, there are big and unpalatable decisions that you have to make sometimes. But here, we have a single focus, and that's public safety. We're not the planning authority, we're not the landlords. Our job is, and the Chief Fire Officer's job, is to put forward what, in the officer's consideration, is the safest option for the whole of that community and the whole of Merseyside. We've gone through a deliberative process, we've come here today, we've given it a really good opportunity. Now, the recommendations are there on page 371 in A, B, C and D. They've been moved, they've been seconded. Would you indicate those in favour, please? That's unanimous. There's no point saying anything against, because that's unanimous. So thank you, members. If the public would like to stay, you'd be very welcome to stay. If you'd like to leave, we could pause for a moment if you'd like to.
It's nearly half past.
Don't look puzzled because you said it. No.
Breaking up people's lives, breaking up
No,
people's
please, it's a public body, it's a public authority,
undermining
with more
people's
business,
quality of life.
with more business
It's
to
a
deal
young
with.
couples that have bought houses with babies on the front
No,
row.
excuse me, madam, please,
Wait,
out of the door.
losing £13,000 worth of value on their
Thank you,
homes.
thank you. Right, we'll move on to the next item now.
Do you want to be painted at or have a house with millions? I'd rather look at the
No,
dates. I'd
please.
rather have I would
Okay.
rather have my health.
Madam,
My physical
Madam.
health.
Okay,
The birds singing.
Thank you.
Along.
Thank you. Would you please
I would
leave
rather
that?
have my spiritual
I'm going to
health
move on
doing the
to
same.
item 9, freedom of information requests,
Breaking
1450.
up people's lives.
Pages, madam,
If Dan's
pages
found 3 different
383
sites
to
over 6
388.
months, surely given
Consider
another
report
3
of the
months
Chief
he'd find
Fire
another
Officer.
site that would be suitable and
Go
that
on,
wouldn't
Leslie.
involve
It's
residents.
very rude.
We're not
Very,
against
very
what you
ignorant.
do.
If you
We
would
value
leave-
what you
If
do.
you would leave
But
now,
it's
with business
because
to...
you're affecting residents. Surely there must be somewhere where residents wouldn't be compromised and
Item
have their
9,
quality
which
of
is on
life
page 383.
ruined.
The purpose of this report
And
is
ask
to
for
inform
response
members
times,
of the
Dan.
entitled freedom of
Dan,
information request.
ask for response times. Can I ask you a question?
Would you like to just...
This was posted on the street scene website by someone called
Item 9,
Jackie.
is that agreed?
Where you-
Item 10,
You
is that
are alleged to have
agreed?
said
Meeting's
when
finished.
someone